it's been a day for me. Not having a good day, but I'm here.
Sorry.
What else am I gonna do? I'm here, guys. But thank you guys for joining us. Samir, how's your day going?
Oh, just another busy work day, like usual. Uh, Perhaps not as frustrating as your day.
I went to Target.
Oh, cute. Did you find anything good in the $5 DVD bin?
I almost bought. They randomly had Blade Runner, the 20 whatever it's called, the new one.
2049 or whatever.
Yeah, I always forget what the actual number is. They had it for $5, and I almost bought it, but it was only on DVD. And I said, if I want to own this movie, but this has to be a Blu-ray.
That's a good call. I agree with that. So you did well.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, like if they had it for like on like $10 on Blu-ray, I would have bought it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But yeah, but thank you guys for being here today. We will be continuing our part 2 of our true crime documentaries that we were doing on Thursdays. And if anyone has watched the new Night Stalker series on Netflix, we could also talk about that a little bit. Because I finished that. What does it mean when one of the highlights of your day is watching something like that?
I think I told you that joke about how one of my nieces once said of my mother, she's like, how come everything Dita watches has like stories of murder? Like my mother loves the same kind of things. So like there's always some like cold case file or some like one of those kinds of shows about a murder on. So I'm there with you. We were bizarrely excited. Who knew that Kevin was right? He's like, oh, what are you watching? You're watching People Like Me. I'm like, oh, well, we did watch somebody who kind of had like your haircut and your bone structure.
Yeah, if anyone watched Night Stalker, just came out yesterday. It's 4 episodes. It's still not the Ted Bundy tapes. It's
not as good as that now.
The bar, I think, as far as, I mean, granted, it's like, you have to look at what they have available to work with. But yeah, but this was still, another interesting thing that, oh wow,
look
service announcement.
Look at somebody helping us out already.
Thank you.
It's like he's doing for you like what you do for me. You're always like, oh wait, here's something you can buy.
Retail therapy is the dangerous thing for me. So it's amazing I went to Target and only bought things I actually needed. I might have bought a few more.
See, you did so good.
Than was planning on. Yeah, but that was oh yeah, so we're off topic talking about Night Stalker, but still on brand. We will get to The Merry Widow, which is what our amazing movie pick from yesterday. Yeah, it did.
I was wondering if you was
complaint with a lot of these serial killer series is we're like, well, that's it though.
I know. It was like I expected more. I did think that they focused a little bit too much on the cop's like personal life. Like, oh, look at how hard it is on a cop and you're in this case. And I'm like,
I just wanted more of everything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, I wanted more of like the case. I wanted more of that information, like, because they ate up a lot of screen time with like just like talking to his wife in the couch in that dark room.
But I like that though, because I don't know. I think a lot of people, it turns into this big media blitz of like, oh, this crazy killer, and he's someone that's like, I kind of knew what his deal was. But I think I more knew about all of his these groupies that he had, which that was something that I felt like we barely touched on in this. There
should have been more about that. I know some people.
Yeah, it's anyway.
Yeah, that was a delightful surprise to break up our evening, give us a full schedule of watching last night.
It did.
because we also watched
So Samir and I
another
had the same
movie.
plan where we watched the first 2 episodes of Night Stalker, then we stopped, and then we watched The Merry Widow, and then we went back to Night Stalker. Anyway, but it is we'll go back to just like true crime documentaries in general because that is our subject. But let's go back to The Merry Widow, which was our pick yesterday. We talked about the fabulous actress Jeanette MacDonald. I realized that I had seen clips of this film because I think they show parts of it in one of the That's Entertainment documentaries.
Probably
Which
the
I randomly like. I grew up watching those, almost like watching like an actual old MGM musical, and so it all just like came back to me of just like I've seen this, I've seen these clips of this, and but in those clips, I don't think they ever showed Jeanette MacDonald. There was a lot of Maurice and a couple of the ballroom sequences that was in there. Yeah, but really, just as Andres is saying right here, really just a delightful movie. A lot of just like funny, quirky moments, and of course, the singing was incredible. The costumes were incredible. That one woman who works at Maxime's with like I'm assuming it's black. It was black and white with the stars.
stars.
I would wear that like in a heartbeat. Like that is my. I would wear that. But all the costumes were just so incredible. Fun plot. Um, and I could see how this really like set the bar for musicals and even just like romantic comedies in general. But I loved it. It was really, really great.
Yeah, I'm so glad you loved it. Like I had a feeling you would because it's like there's so many moments. Like when you think back to everything, I'm like even like the one shot that always gets everybody that like out of nowhere, you suddenly get the shot of it panning over to like all the female dates of the men at Maxime's in line at the bar, and all the men are still, and all the women are like their bustles are
like their little bustles, like da da da,
and like it doesn't
da da da.
see the music totally like you can't get that music out of your head.
Some songs too is like frou frou gigi.
Oh my god, it's just like every single like every moment like he finds somewhere to slip an extra little joke and an extra beautiful detail, an extra something everywhere. You don't think there's room to fit all these things in there, and then, especially her house, like when you get into her house, like that set is so incredible. Like her first song, like her when you first get to hear her sing, and it's like every shot of the outside of that house, every like the design even of her balcony, it almost looks like a ship sailing out into the moonlit sky. Like in that one wide shot of everything as she's like singing and stretching her arm. I'm like, all these images are so beautiful. But then there's like the fact that even when she's in mourning, so everything she has is black, and like they show her putting away all her clothes, and everything is black, 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 and then even her dog is like a black dog on a white cushion. And then when she changes and she's like, I'm going to Paris.
Yeah.
Screw this.
A widow can only take so much, I think was the line. Like that.
And then everything changes to shades of white. And then even the dog is like replaced with a white dog because she's over wearing black. Like so there's just like that, or like when she's like, oh well, do you know this Count Danilo? And they're like, oh yeah, he lives here.
Apartment B, second floor. And then they're all like, oh. And then they all seem upset that like they think they've all been played by him. But yeah, really, really fun. I would recommend this movie to anyone. Out of the 2 Ernst Lubitsch films that we've seen on our show in recent months, the other one being
Trouble in Paradise.
I like this one better. I
feel like this is
Paradise, but this was. I mean, it also helps that it's musical, but
yeah, this one's like way up there for me. Like this is definitely my favorite Lubitsch. That whole embassy ball sequence is just like it gives me chills just thinking about it, because it's also like that music is hypnotizing. That music, like since that first moment that they dance together, you know.
Wait, now I had the Merry Widow waltz all in my head last night, and now it's gone.
Oh. Dun, da, 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 da.
Wait, I have to find it now. Hang on.
And then it mixes it back with a Melody of Paris in the spring. But like you get
Very
that
Widow waltz.
they like hear the music and they're just like drawn. They instantly just start to come together and dance. And then you see like everybody dancing, and it's almost like they're the what they're feeling in their hearts in that moment. They're like so in love and so enraptured that like the number of people and the intensity of the music builds and builds. And then that shot of all the people turning down the mirrored hallway.
Yeah, that was one they showed in That's Entertainment.
It's just like, and because it's just like the music is sort of like the key is like raising and the crescendo is raising, and you kind of just start floating along with all these dancers. It's just like such a joyous like sequence. Like that's another one I can watch over and over and over again. But the whole film, and then you think it's run out of gas somehow, and then they still find more places to fit in jokes, like when they go to trial, like remove all the livestock from the courtroom, please.
Yeah, it's like, can you? It's just like, why is there a goat in here?
Or the assistant reading back the coded telegrams to go, you are the biggest
idiot. What does darling mean? Like, you are an idiot. Like,
you are the biggest idiot in the diplomatic service.
Yeah, all the supporting characters were hysterical too. And I remember you had told me, you might have talked about in the show, just like the subtle humor of Ernst Lubitsch, where like the king goes he goes back into his quarters and doesn't notice that Maurice is in there with his wife. It's only when he comes back out, he's trying to put on his belt with a sword and realizing like, this is too small. Why isn't this? And then
he realizes
he's like, oh.
Oh, I loved even the queen, or the queen was so funny too. She's like, do you think you'll be out all night? She just says it over and over and over again. You don't understand why until he leaves, and then Danilo goes in. And they have to exchange the little like anklet because he's already got it on in the few minutes they've been there. But like her whole shtick, like that, her little scenes where she's like, oh no, I'd still choose this other person. That shows you what I think of him. No, yeah. Or like when they're like, I guess it's exile for us, and then they're like packing up the cats. They're packing up the castle, and the king picks up his crown and wraps it in newspaper. Like there's little things like that everywhere. Or even like when they're like in the cell and they're like he keeps giving and taking back the badge. It's
like, imagine if we were in there and you were a man and I was a woman and we were madly in love. Just really, really fun. And I've been mentioning That's Entertainment. And for those who don't know what that is, that was a series of documentaries. There's 3 of them. They're actually all on Turner Classic Movies right now. That's something I did see, and I want to watch them. Although I think my sister has a couple of them on DVD. But they were these amazing documentaries that were made when most of these actors were still alive. But they made this, I think, in like the 70s is when they.
I think the late 70s,
They started the first one, and so they get to interview all of these actors, and they show the MGM backlot before it was torn down. But it's just this really amazing overview of all these MGM musicals, and that's where I remembered I had seen clips of The Merry Widow in that. And they're fun to watch on their own. And if you're into musicals and haven't really seen a lot of these old MGM classics, which are my favorite musicals, I really recommend watching this, and you can just kind of see like a great overview, and maybe you see clips from all different kinds of their films, and see what looks interesting, and be like, okay, maybe I really enjoy that clip. I'm going to go watch the whole movie now. It's almost like a big trailer of all the MGM musicals and really amazing footage.
At least it's represented in that, because I haven't seen that first one for a long time, and it makes me happy to hear that. Just because I do feel like does it feel like such a shame that this movie is not like heralded as one of these great classics that everybody should know and watch. Like it really just should be. Mm-hmm. It's just stunning to me that somehow this movie has been buried, and it's like at the time it was the most expensive movie ever made.
Yeah. which just by looking at the sets, you could tell.
You can tell how much money they
Yeah.
spent, and it was money well spent at the very least. Um, but it really ought to be like just cherished as a treasure from the 30s. It is one of the great musicals. Like I said, like this is what a musical should do. I think for you, if you're going for a crowd pleasing, like funny, happy musical, like I really don't know how you get better than something like this, because it just never misses. It never misses. It just hits the bullseye every time in so many little ways that every rewatch you're going to discover more little jokes. Or even like the moment when he first meets the ambassador. He's supposed to meet with the ambassador, and like all the women always know him, so this other woman knows him too. He's like, Lulu. And he starts making out with her, and then the ambassador comes back, and he takes her back. He's like, did you say something? No. Are you looking for trouble? No. You know, like until they start fighting, and then she's like, oh my God, and calls the policeman. And then in the time that she's gone,
Exchange
like they figure out who each other. And start hugging like vigorously, and then they come back and like, so it's like one joke that's funny, like he just piles it on somehow in a way that it just always feels fresh. Like this movie does not feel dated in a lot of ways, even though it was just before the production code kind of really came into play. And Jeanette MacDonald is like so sassy and fun.
Yeah, I want to talk about her before we move on. Yeah, being that she was our subject from yesterday. Yeah, she was just like dazzling in this.
Dazzling.
I don't know if I had seen her in anything else. I think she's just someone where, again, I've just seen clips, but not a full feature film. But just so gorgeous, incredible voice. Yeah, it really brought that sassiness and the comedy chops to this film.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned yesterday that she has some moments too where you know, it's dramatic. She's like heartbroken. She thinks that she's being lied to and
exploited, and you see like she really plays that like so it's so real. It feels so real emotionally in those moments too. Like that's Lubitsch has such like a warm heart, and like I think it just radiates out with all these performers. So this movie has so much heart underneath all this, the bounce and the fluff and the fun and the lightness. Like there's like a real emotional human being underneath each of these people in some way, and she really brings that out so well. And it transforms Danilo. He makes he's no longer a Casanova. Even tell him there's a party in the women's ward tonight. Like,
he's like,
how do you? I don't know how you do this. Like this is like the gold standard. Like if you want to make a comedy film, you need to watch this movie. This needs to be part of your textbook. Oh, definitely, Mike. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah, this is available to rent. It's on Apple. It's not really called iTunes anymore, is it? We keep saying iTunes.
Whatever it is, iMovies or not even that. It's just
on Amazon. You could rent it there for a few bucks. It's also not very much more to just buy it, buy a digital copy of it.
Yeah, it's like $2 to rent, $5 to buy. I bought it, and it's like the best $5 I think I ever spent in my life to have this to watch whenever I want. Because it's also a movie like you think like it sounds ridiculous, but this is one of those movies like you may have just watched it, and like maybe like, oh, you know what? I want to watch that first scene again, where she's that first singing scene. Like I did that today, or I'm like, I just want to watch that scene again. And I'm like, oh, it seems stupid to not watch the beginning. It's just a couple minutes before, so I just put it on just so I could see this first few scenes. And then I just kept watching. I just watched it last night, but you do not feel like you are seeing it for the second time. You don't feel like you still somehow feels fresh each time you put it on. It's magic. It's like champagne that never goes flat.
Me and Singing in the Rain, I swear. But yeah, please check it out. Really, really fun. If you are a lover of musicals, it's a must see. But today's subject, being that it is Thursday, we are doing.
Please check it out, Walter.
Yeah, all wait, Better Than Heaven.
Yes, Mike. I mean, I love Heaven Can Wait. Love Heaven Can Wait. This movie definitely is like the peak romantic musical comedy for Lubitsch. If you liked Heaven Can Wait, you should love this movie. I think you will.
So we're talking about true crime documentaries every Thursday this month. Again, we're picking from now on. We're just sticking with one genre and highlighting it every Thursday. And yeah, we're doing true crime. And when we were coming up, we only had 4 options for true crime this month. And as we were talking about not too long ago, Samir and I are certainly a fan of all the serial killer documentaries and series, a lot of little mini series that a lot of I don't know, anything with serial killers or cults. That's
Yeah.
that's a world that I'm just so not like anyone who does horrible things like that because imperfect and it's so I'm that's why I'm just so fascinated with them. And I think a lot of people, when we think of true crime, we think of murder. They're like, how many true crime TV shows are there? Like, oh, what's the one? Is it just called True Crime Stories? There's one that my dad was really into for a while. It was one where it's like all these men kept killing their wives, and then we were like, it's a little disturbing how often you're watching this, Dad. He's like, I'm learning what not to do. All these men got caught.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, but it's so easy to, I mean, here we were talking about the Night Stalker, and there is this like it's just so crazy and insane where you're like, God, he killed so many people, and what an absolutely horrible person. And it's this guilty pleasure to get like sucked in, and you want to know all the details of these grisly murders. And so I would say murders in general kind of are the most popular out of true crime documentaries.
Yeah.
But when we were coming up with this list, again, only having 4 options, Samir said we need to have a white collar crime documentary, which at first might not seem quite as sexy as the murder documentaries, but
Right.
I think it's good to highlight them to show it's like, okay, maybe no one died from some of these crimes, but lives were ruined nonetheless. And
yes, many lives. And we kind of toyed. I was kind of wanted to be like, let's watch one of the Fire Festival documentaries because there's like they're so good, and you hadn't seen the Hulu one yet. But
who killed the electric
I feel like everybody's
guys in the room. There were many. Some Michael Moore documentaries have been more focused on white collar crime, like Capitalism, a Love Story, and things like that.
But I felt like this one was a good, like a really good option that sort of fits in the same vein as like the Firefest scam artist type white collar criminal that sort of come into fruition in the last 20 years. And this is a particularly pernicious one because the consequences of this being a scam are that people get a literally potentially dangerously wrong picture of their own health and what's going on in their body because of this person's scam. And so it's a fascinating story, and we got Amy, you did it. I wish you had the little nanotainer, as she called it.
I need some rings too.
But you've got the pose just about right. You just need. Oh, you have the rings. But yes, it was. This is a crazy story. Like the levels of like the people that she got involved. Even that. Maybe if she was collecting that amount of. Her eyes are so big and scary. You'll discover that in this documentary for sure. And her fake deep voice that I can't remember if they play a clip of it in this documentary or not, but like there's recordings where she lets her real voice actually like slip through, but she like even went to the lengths of like copying Steve Jobs' outfit and deepening her voice to like to be more accepted because she which she was brilliant in the way she scanned people. She got a lot of money out of a lot of big name people and got like major political people involved in her business. Like, it's astounding how far this went.
So this documentary is called The Inventor, Out for Blood in Silicon Valley. This came out in 2019. It was an HBO documentary, so it is available on HBO Max. The story of Theranos. Theranos?
Theranos.
Theranos. The story of Theranos, that sounds like a Marvel character. A multi-billion-dollar tech company. Its founder, Elizabeth Holmes, the youngest self-made female billionaire, and the massive fraud that collapsed the company. And this was nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Documentary.
I think quite good. I think it was a good option to be nominated. Because I think people have been, this actually kind of had a little bit of a zeitgeist moment too, because there was an ABC like 2020 special. They'd done a podcast about her.
I'm gonna work on this. Hang on.
Work on this.
I don't have makeup on, so that can make my eyes look bigger too. But keep talking.
I was gonna say, you do need the makeup and the red lips. She had really dramatic red lipstick in the color version of this shot. You're just making me laugh. I can't even. Oh, hi, Crystal. Crystal has joined us, and thank you,
Crystal,
for the compliments. But this particular story, like, this happened also, it's like a big tech story, kind of, because she kind of was riding that wave. But you'll be surprised to see the number of, like, high-level political people that she's frequently seen with or interviewed by, or like at conferences. Like, she masterfully hoodwinked everybody for a while with a thing that never worked. It never worked. Like, the thing that they were trying to make never worked until you get to hear from all the employees who really were actually, you get to hear from the employees who recognized something was wrong, some of the people who tried to do something about it. It's a nice sampling of people. I remember some of the interviews were pretty funny. Like, when one woman says, like, when I heard this happening, I hate to say it, but I started brushing up my resume. Like, like, so that's how, like, some people on the inside were like, oh shit, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And it was like, she was very fierce and determined to fight anybody who got in her way. Very viciously, in one case, nearly tearing a family apart. You'll get to see, I don't want to ruin all the spoilers. I don't want to give you spoilers for it, but
this will be me almost going in blind watching this, because I really don't know anything about her for this.
It'll be a fascinating story.
Yeah, but I really don't even know very much about the story itself. Because
they'll teach you.
Yeah, because I'm more wrapped up in keeping up to date with all the serial killers. So
it's so hard to prioritize these days. But you know what? White collar criminals do damage on a much larger scale. Like you said, maybe not actually murdering people, but there's major consequences for a lot of people when these people commit their crimes. Like, it's not just rich people being swindled. This was also because it was it had to do with people's healthcare. And so people, trying to use this device that she was inventing, or she wasn't even really inventing it. She didn't even really do that. She just basically came up with the idea and told people to make it, and somehow raised, like, seriously hundreds of millions of dollars from big sources, like lots of big money donations, all on the power of the pitch, really. Kind of like Billy McFarland with Fire Festival was able to keep, like, suckering people with this, con man persona. Like, it seems easier and easier as we've witnessed the last 4 years, especially, how pernicious and persuasive a con man can be on people if you know how to play to them. And so she figured out how to play to people with lots of money and influence to protect her. And you have to wonder at some point, what was really the goal with these people? Like, you lied the entire time. Like, you never told the truth. This was never an actual viable thing, but you still somehow convinced how many people that it was. Like that's just like pure sociopath level. Like you, like someone that you can look into those big, giant, weird eyes, and those eyes are lying to you every time. Ah, she's pretty scary when you start hearing her voice. Wait till you hear it, Amy. That's the thing. It's like kind of like those like ransom phone call voices. If you leave the money, like that. It's like that kind of voice. Like she tries to go that deep. It sounds like kind of like how Vin Diesel always sounds like there's this big wad of phlegm in the back of his throat that just he can't get out.
Samir, you leave Vin Diesel.
His voice sounds like that. Well, she's got the same hunk of phlegm. It must be some sort of weird genetic thing that some people are born with. I don't know, but she has that same kind of thing with her deepened voice. Just you'll hear it. You'll hear it.
Well, I'm really looking forward to watching this again. This is available on HBO Max, and that's one. HBO Max, they made that big announcement where they're going to. Oh no, that was Netflix. Netflix is putting a new movie out every week. But HBO Max, they also have a lot of movies that were supposed to come out in theaters. So they're pricey, but that might be one that's worth adding.
It may be worth it.
Yeah.
May or may not, depending on how many movies are released in the next few months. It's like, okay, if it's $15 a month, $45 for 3 months. If I watched like 6 new release movies, like you came out ahead. Those would have probably cost you $15 to see in the theater in some way. You still would end up saving some money, but I can understand that being a concern. But I know that if you are already an HBO subscriber, I believe this movie you can watch like on one of those other, like if you have like added HBO to your Hulu subscription, for instance, like you can watch this with that. Yeah. It doesn't have to be HBO Max. It's actually available on just straight HBO. Annika asked us, what is your favorite true doc crime story?
Oh,
that's a big question, isn't it?
I mean,
like, come on, what's one that you go to? Like the Ted Bundy tapes.
Yeah, I have been super into the Ted Bundy tapes. I just thought that was such an insane story. And I was just amazed by the footage they had and the fact that they actually had these actual tapes of someone interviewing him when he was in prison. Just really, and again, there's, especially when it comes to a documentary, you can only go so far as like what footage you have, and working with what actually is real, or they might end up like, okay, we'll do some recreation scenes and things like that. But that some recent ones I watched. Another one that's on HBO is Heaven's Gate. That documentary series for those who are into cults. That one's good. And Netflix has so many. But there's a lot. There's documentaries I really love.
I said there's almost too many to choose from. It's so hard. Yeah. Like there's a lot on Netflix. A lot of different series.
I'm looking.
I mean, there are some classic ones. We're actually going to cover one that's become sort of like a new classic later this month. Actually, two new classics later this month. But I'm looking at a list now, and it says like The Act of Killing is listed as a true crime documentary, which I don't know that I would consider it that, but it is a great documentary. Cartel Land, obviously, we watched that last week.
Yeah, and that's still that one's on Tubi if people wanted to go back and watch that. And the two that we have planned for the rest of the month are two of my other favorites. With Into the Abyss, that's next week's film, the Werner Herzog film, and then Abducted in Plain Sight, which I know that we're going to have a spirited talk after watching that film, because that is just one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Yeah, but there's
Looking forward to that day.
I still go back to the classic, Making a Murderer. I only saw season 1,
Mm.
but I was obsessed with that, and that was actually, like, a long series. I kind of want all these other ones to be as long as
You're
Making a
right.
Murderer.
I want more episodes than these 4 usually.
Yeah.
Um,
And also I like things like, the Central Park 5 documentary.
mhm.
I always really appreciate things that have some happy endings where, I was like, okay, someone was wrongly convicted and then there ends up being, something good that comes out of it.
Like
Um,
when they solve unsolved mysteries.
yeah, there's a lot. It's really a deep dive, and it really was hard only picking 4 films. There was another one that we haven't watched yet, but almost made the list just because it sounded so interesting. But there was that one about the guy with the wine scam. He
The
was
what?
like,
Yes.
yeah, let me see. I think it was called Sour Grapes, which I
Yes.
still really want to watch that. But that was one about a guy who he was scamming people by getting these expensive bottles of wine, or I think he was even like forging the labels and then just putting cheap wine in them and then selling them for you know exorbitant amounts of money to these wine collectors. So that one sounded really good too, and that was actually, I think we were looking up white collar crime documentaries, and that one popped up as being a really good one. So we still
I
want to
know,
see
great
that.
title. One,
Crime is there's an ending sometimes. That's true. That's true. You kind of know how things are going to turn out for the most part. But the thing that's especially with things like some of these famed serial killers, it's like I kind of know what happened, but I just don't know the full extent of
mhm.
and especially with the Ted Bundy tapes, the fact that like Walter said that he was living in Colorado when he escaped. Just even like I didn't know things like that, like how
Terrifying.
he was from prison, from police custody a few times, and then another thing that's so interesting too with a lot of these, because we also watched, I'm on this whole serial killer binge now. Samir and I both recently watched The Ripper, which came out recently on
Mhm.
Netflix. About was it the Yorkshire?
Yeah,
Was it
I think
the
so.
Yorkshire Ripper? Yeah, and that happened in that was I think the 1980s as
Yeah, it
well.
wasn't too long ago.
Yeah. With a lot of these, it also shows kind of like how some of this could have ended a lot sooner. There could have been less people killed if it weren't just for, you know, incompetency by the people involved or just like
Mhm.
department. And same with the Ted Bundy tapes too. There's a huge thing with that of like, he killed
Mhm.
over such like a wide area of the US where there wasn't even like a system where they could work together and share information. It was like, no, this is my jurisdiction, we're sticking with this murder. It's like, okay, but if it's the same guy, maybe you guys should talk. So that's another really fascinating aspect too. It's not just the killer, but there was definitely some of that with the Ripper as well, and that's another, I think that one was 4 parts too.
Yeah, and also they were hampered in that one because the cops were all dudes who just assumed every woman who was killed who was out after 9 p.m. was a sex worker.
Yeah.
Like that also, like they were like, oh yeah, so this is a guy who kills sex workers, and like this woman was just out at a bar having drinks. Like she wasn't a sex
Yeah,
worker. Some people
wasn't
may
until
have.
like the teenager was killed that people were like, "Oh, this is worth attention." It's like, yeah, he's already killed like 6 people,
Yeah,
6 women before this. Yeah, so they're really just like nothing is stranger than the truth with a lot of this. And I know documentaries, there's always room for manipulation by the filmmakers themselves. Um, Depending on what it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of documentaries as a whole, and true crime documentaries are just there's they're crazy. I also am. This is a whole other thing, but any documentaries that have to do with like um, corruption in the Catholic Church, that's another thing where I want to watch
you want to
that.
know all
All
the
of
details.
those,
You want to hear how.
Keepers, was that the one that's on Netflix about that nun? That one was pretty interesting. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
that
a
was a good one.
yeah, that
You
one was really
ever the show Dirty Money on Netflix. That's actually a good series.
I haven't watched that. That one would be a lot more white collar, I'm assuming.
Yes, lots of big ones, but there's like one about a theft of like millions of dollars worth of maple syrup in Canada. Like that's one of the stories, like the story about the maple syrup industry. So it's like it goes into interesting places in that series. So I do highly recommend that stuff.
Okay,
The corruption angle, basically seeing the darkness rooted, like discovered and rooted out in a way. There's something satisfying about most of those, about going to the dark side, but then you're like, nope, I'm still here on the good side. I'm still over here. I'm just observing you.
Like Walter, just talk about white collar crime. That's good. That's good.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you're into true crime documentaries, you definitely don't want to miss the next 2 Thursdays for the month. Again, next week we're doing this, which is, that one's a murder one. Not serial killers, but a murder documentary. And that one's just, that one's really good too. That's one I think we watched in our documentary class. I've seen that one at least like 3 times. Really good. Really, really good. But I'm excited to watch The Inventor this evening, Out for Blood in Silicon Valley. Again, that is available on HBO Max. If you enjoy watching our show, please consider donating to our Patreon. Putting the link over here in the comments. We do not get paid to do this. Yeah, but the tiers start at only $2 a month. You can cancel anytime. You could upgrade at any time. If anyone is interested in getting a movie in for next month, if you're the screenwriter tier or higher, time's running out because we haven't actually started placing movies, but we pretty much have the whole calendar already down.
We have enough movies and more.
Yeah, we have our choices from our current Patreons, and it's going to be a really, really good month.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've got some fun and important films. Fun films, important films. Yeah, it's going to be a lot. But thank you guys for watching today. I am doing Behind the Bums tonight for those who watch that. That will be at 7:30 this evening. Yeah. Thank you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow for our oh yeah, I didn't talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow is Cult Classic Friday. First, we'll be talking about our after the movie discussion of The Inventor. And then for our Cult Classic Friday pick, we have Tremors, which is another one that I have not seen. Yeah. I think we're in for a wild ride here.
It's going to be a good time.
It will. Well, thank you guys.